Hi, Dr. Dixon. This is my speaking outline, and here's my visual aid. There are many humans on our planet. What does the number 6,930,000,000 mean to you? Is there a significance in this number? Well, this number, which is 6,930,000,000, is 99% of the world's population. 6,930,000,000 is the number of lives that were lost. Only 1% is left of the original eastern oyster population in our Chesapeake Bay, according to Dixon in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay. They have been cut out due to overharvesting, disease, and development. That has killed some of the most important keystone species in our bay. Today I will talk about why oysters are so important to our bay, some of the problems that they are encountering, and ways that we can get involved to help save them. The eastern oyster is a valuable member in the Chesapeake Bay. Dixon, in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay, talk about how they are an important keystone species that supports a community in our bay. Kimmel, Taranowski, and Newell discussed in their article Long-Term Spatial Patterns in Juvenile Eastern Oyster Abundance in the Maryland portion of the Chesapeake Bay, how the eastern oyster is an ecological engineering species and is also economically valuable in our society. The oysters are also a key element in keeping our bay clean. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation's website talks about how the oysters filter nutrients and sediments, along with pollution, in order to keep our bay cleaner. Dixon in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay also elaborate on this important fact. The NOAA website talks about how oysters can also filter nitrogen, and a single oyster can filter 50 gallons of water within just 24 hours. Here is the shell of a mature eastern oyster. Oysters are also known for their oyster reefs and their bars. According to Kimmel, Taranowski, and Newell in their article Long-Term Spatial Patterns in Juvenile Eastern Oyster Abundance in the Maryland portion of the Chesapeake Bay, they talk about how oysters modify their environment by building up these bars and reefs. Dixon in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay talk about how the oysters are the only natural hard bottom in our bay, which is vital for supporting many of the organisms that live there. Now that we have taken a look at why the oysters are so vital for our bay, let's take a look at some of the problems that they're encountering. According to Dixon in their article Life on the Chesapeake Bay, overharvesting was one of these problems. This occurred in the early 1600s when log canoes and tongs were used. As technology developed, bug-eye vessels and mechanical dredges were used for harvesting them. Today, skipjack vessels and heavy dredges are used. Now, only 4 out of the total of 1,000 skipjacks are used in the bay for harvesting. Disease also wiped out these oyster populations. Dixon in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay discussed how the dermo and MSX parasite help to destroy these oysters. The dermo parasite can survive in low salinity waters, which makes them a danger for the oysters in that section of the bay, while the MSX parasite can survive in high salinity waters, which makes them a threat to both the north and the southern bays in Maryland. Development also helped to wipe out these oyster populations. Dixon talk about in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay how the development has eliminated absorbing surfaces, which once took up rainwater. This rainwater, which is fresh water, runs into the bay and makes the water too fresh for the oysters to reproduce. And our oysters in the Chesapeake Bay are not the only ones that are in trouble. According to Arialdi, Beck, Broma, Carranza, Cohen, and Crawford in their article Oyster Reefs at Risk and Recommendations for Conservation, Restoration, and Management, Canada, Australia, Northern Europe, and the UK are also having similar problems. Breitberg, Crispin, Drew Baxter, Keller, Kennedy, and Kramer in their article Lessons Learned from the Efforts to Restore Oyster Populations in Maryland and Virginia, 1990 to 2007, talk about how shellfish bars worldwide are shrinking in size. This is a major problem for all of us. Now that we have talked about some of the problems that oysters are encountering, let's take a look at some of the ways that we can learn to protect the oysters. One of these ways is oyster hatcheries. According to Lipson and Lipson in their book Life on the Chesapeake Bay, Maryland's Department of Natural Resources supports a hatchery that is managed by the University of Maryland, which produces 2 billion immature oysters a year. Another way that we protect these oysters are through oyster sanctuaries. Many oysters from the oyster hatcheries are brought over to the sanctuaries, which are protected areas in which oysters cannot be harvested. According to the NOAA website, these sanctuaries in Maryland cover about 9,000 acres of land. There are also many programs that help to save these oysters. One of these programs is run by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and it is called the Hamptons Road Oysters Gardening Program. This involves you being interested in helping these oysters and having a staff member come out to your local dock or pier. They will teach you how to construct a habitat for your oysters and how to grow and nurture them until they are large enough to return to these sanctuaries and then eventually back into the bay. For more information on them, their website is www.cbf.org. In conclusion, eastern oysters are vital components and keystone species to our Chesapeake Bay. Their filtration systems, their reefs, and oyster bars are very important and help the bay to thrive. The bay's health would be in danger without them, and our ecosystems would be in chaos. Overharvesting, disease, and development have also helped to hinder the growth of the eastern oyster population. And our oysters are not the only ones suffering. These problems are happening all over the world right now, and we can always help that. Some programs that are made to protect the oysters include oyster hatcheries, oyster sanctuaries, and helping to grow local oysters on our own docks through many local programs. We can help by volunteering our time to any one of these amazing programs to help save this unique species that is so important to our Chesapeake Bay. What does the number 6,930,000,000 mean to you now? With our help, the eastern oyster population can be protected, and that 1% can grow, allowing for our bay to thrive for our future generations.